to at. Wel cheese Johan. Nike. Sukke. Huchaka.
I can go.
Oh, can cheese.
Okay. It's not like put together. Good. Oh, sorry. I wasn't supposed to apologize first. Okay. Okay. Nishku. Yak e hati gudi. Yak e satini. Ha ye kuwat awe klish ew ich wasatin. Wasa yati tla. Ach tla yak e. Seganen. Chat ach tlaq iu ha. An you do sak. Iguayak Juan at Kahun. Seganen awe kwat. Ach aye kak wachak gnatjish. Tle wasa I tu klitsa ika.
Yak can cheese. Yak Johan. Atu satsu. Sukke.
Yakke. Klede hin ach in aax'w. Hastin yanshukade kwakuch. Nich kade gurkan watusatin cha at hun. Ach yakawu yu yachsika. Gurkan nachtutlun. Kle nich de watua at we gurkan slun. We gurkan kle watusatin. Te klen yatech au tudlisin. Watua ki kle gurkan katledut. Gurkan kle gagi wugut. Su katledut. Gurkan kle gagi wugut. Su gurkan katledut. Aga awe gurkan watua ach ige yach nashichi. She wedu kle gurkan kua daka ade klen ka tuch ka dadzichao. Haya nashich anak ayach dechan. Ach yakawu ya nak ya ayan dechan. Ye da yu tuch watan sik aya. Kle awasko. Ye chat yati slinget. Sik su gurkan slun. Ka gurkan kadagache. Awa ach. Sik kle kiden kustin kua kiden ku ach ya kudzinich. Ach jin shak klien chukle ye ke khwa ich. Sik ye khat yati slinget. Sik ye khat yati slinget. Sik ye khat yati slinget. Sik awa ach yadu. Yach lejech slinget yenach genach yu gatangi. Sik ach nak ayaw de hanan. Khwa ich khat asluni at natiye wa e klesh achla uchla slun. Dudaya kushusge ach yu gatangi. Ach yakau chaudetan sik uga jogging. Klek. Cha klek duda ya kushu wusge uhan klek gurkan. Adach away ahin cha lidikat slingit ani adich slingit yu khatangi du daya kushuk sagech. Gunus chish.
Yekecha. Jeez. Okay. Okay. That's
Suya Clark wa Texas aya kudziti Colorado de ke ustak juliana School de Texas Yanaguta Florida 1994 Santa Kahini de Yanagut ka ich de shi yewuti Clark ka ish Wifgate has Woodyat which has Shah Rohit Zantakahini Has Awa'u 1999 Khat Kidziti.
okay. Jeez. Okay. Johan.
I'll go. Oh, I
Ah,
lost my story though. Oh, there. Okay. Susan, you do a saku akhane. Hastuatawi aksi. Aksi. Ha kusti hastuutlitu. Has asikhan knach. Santa Fe ye yati dat. Fairbanks cha ku yewuti. Ta'awak desit Fairbanks kusiat ka hukau jigit. Haku neyis jis Susan Parka hakes. Kleka kejin kech dujiwu. Khat ya anas khat kech. De yika yahas hlunaguk Susan Kadu Kate. Flaku gleitnach kaudliich.
okay. Jeez. Okay, away, Johan. It's okay. Huh.
I can try.
It's cheese.
Okay, I put it with images. Hune, is that okay? So I'm a teacher, and it's not has nothing to do with family. So is that okay if I'll just do it? Okay. Is that right? It's not done, but we're trying to make holding the violin be a place-based imagery. So I'm gonna teach Kune. We're going over this today. Okay. Gechja ade dudle achjie. Asketu yich yantu at ichte. Oh, really? I'll just go. That's an important one to say. So I'm going to go back. Can you still see it?
Ah.
Asquani achtua sigu. Shuk wanach dagach tutani. Yasheyi. Duk sach. Chai. Shek. Uwayai. Uwaya. Singit. Chasatiyi. Aya sak ajide. Tulsaat. Askatuyach chayati. Hagachlatsini. Ut inye jichgachtune. Kinde anilgen. Sheyi yekte. Dasa yetin. Akudi tuatin. Kaltagenach. Kaltagenach. Kaltegenach. Wat kachkana. Tlakat at ajik. Tutiat ya uene. Sit kanach anilgen. Dasa ya ach. Sa wutua ach. Yande ya nats ein weta. At yes ein. Hinya nach akhat. I'll stop there.
Okay, good cheese. Go see. Ah, need the screen shares.
Take.
Okay.
Rodolfo, you do a sub ish. Colombia Kurdistan. Ricardo, you do a sub hunk. Tre and tooth esh. One day, I'll tooth ech utua art. You do him kashik uk hunk ayaka kleta sayat ye ayahaka yadu had quasatin shark de hut awe hat awe hunk ayaka gagwak ich klechat wood awe Kle a ach kla hach hach. Kle a ach kla hach hach. Hat a ya a a. Dus a ya kuch ach. Kuna hu ye aya ye ayach ye ayachaka. Dus had ach klaji yes. To be continued.
Ah, okay, good cheese. Okay, Johan. Stakat Johan again? Yechoji. Gwallachid qoha aqaqachtilsa. Leidehinawe ya achkik. Yashkalnik. I idekakwanik. Ade shwutatakye a nasi team. Ade shwutatakye a nasi team. Wegal. Gwall ke kaka kejin awe ach katagu. Ak. Ach kik yasatki at we washin. Yasatki at. A kachka dil zacht yachyeti. Washin ko atlach yasatki a. A kachoe at wukuch. Ya ach kik. Wegal. Gwall nas dushu awe to katagu. Gwall ka. At katskuch wasati. Ted Plain awe a gate wukuch. Tlach yasatk away. A dach away with the hitch. A qa away. Where a kach du shati yeah. Ya du khus ya away. Kat se akwasa du sakwits ak clean. Kat tits aki away. Wutlig. Kunach away wutlig. One qanins. We kunagu. Ya shukat ku daat yejene. Kelk denye has jiwane ko Kesh ayach uti a day du daye has jiwane. Kesh has awus neer du khus. Yada away du qats. Eka du qats away. A joy tsu has wutlig. Dits ak. Ishan de nach tuati away ach kik daat. Anchorage you do a sock way on wuti. Du khant aya ach tuasagut du khat kwakuti. A joy ade khotakin. Yes, qone aya yakunahin yaga. Yes, qone yakunahin. Wish the cut we yes. Yage atoy yanakh. State Fair you do a sock late cockina. Oh, aax'w. Si tu a guess a go a day or two a cook. Ah, do to us a go. Do two, okay. Yakana juhu kaya kajit. Yakana juhu kaya kajit. The kachawe unuk. Get the cut yech away. Do eat what the she. At what kuchaya. The eye. Wega. Aax'ws. Eat gay yanua, huh? Ah, kunachach eat yanua, huh? Das I to us a good. Ah, train at ha ayak puts a tiyak, the cut ye de at ha has to chew. A nasiach to us a good. Krekage, just the cut that the great kusi. Wasus glee, kakokli. A nasiach to us a good. Ah, equati. A de awech juch, way, ye kana jucha. Kayakajit. Hasawe, ach kik, ach ewa wus. Has ewa wus. Das I to us a go and nasi kach, hukoa. Just the cut at. Wega. What's that do suck? Asha. Like. Asha chutas. Ah. You do a suck. Wash. Isha kawu. Ye has our unuch. Ya. Kasha chutla. Like. Kasha chutas. Ah. Ye awe achchi ye wutien. Shawuch yacheti. Kashaqis aax'w ach tuya ke ach chiye utiin. Ach kik koa. Hechwasa ke uti is aax'w. Ach sha kich aya yechwatu. Guk, kik. Anasi aya haswatutliech. Just the cut at a kach aya yewune. Just the cut at. Yahuchi ayi. Teshasaya kutzitiyan. Mustard. A kach aya yehas ausani. Yisukukuksa kache. Yag kache. Ach aax'w aya. Du shakik e utiyan. Kone aya kukwaha. Akash with the tuck. Yatayach we anasi. Ya aax'w akaye wuti. Just the cut by atcha. Ya mustard klach klesh achtua oshko klesh dasa a cook. Joy to inka honig. Is aax'w yidat. Ye owe ach shkashnigi ach kik da. It's a watlain do yet khwasa. A joy keo to sa wat khatcha ach shat. Ye owe. Gonna sheesh ach eti sa achi. Klachonach wuk e yishkashnigi too. What kleshetina khatuti tsu yejek kone ye konacho yisaku shingit. Ya niskwain shtakat yuhan gun sheesh. Ik ha. Any questions before we take our break? You guys want a summary of my story?
There's something about leg and then mustard.
Yeah, I kept forgetting the word for.
And you said your uncle, your paternal, or no, who?
My little brother.
Oh.
Did you break your foot?
Yeah, but I couldn't remember the word for the femur. So I ended up saying qats tu s'aq. Because, okay, a khus is your foot and the lower part of your leg. And qats is the upper part of your leg. And I kept getting that mixed up. So he was, let's see, I was 25 years old, so I said, long time ago. I think it's fun. So he was 8, and he was on a motorcycle. There's no word for motorcycle, so saying it was a fast thing. It was a machine. It's like a bicycle, but it's a machine. And he was going really fast, and he hit a big rock, and it threw him, and then his leg hit the handlebars and broke, just clean broken hand. And then sometimes native healthcare isn't that great, and they messed up, and they didn't do a good job fixing his leg. Maybe he did something he wasn't supposed to do, but they had to break it again. So I felt really bad for him, so I flew up there. It was a fall time. Yes, the fall was arriving at that time. They always have the state fair, so I said, you want to go to the state fair? I'll take you to the state fair. So I took them, and they had a rolling chair. So I got a wheelchair for him, and I was rolling him around. Did all kinds of stuff, and I said, are you hungry? He said, I'm hungry. I said, what do you want? He said, a hot dog. I said, they got everything. Are you sure that's what you want? He says, a hot dog. I said, okay. And I had this, I kept messing up on the name. I think it's called Kashachutas. Oh, it's got a funny name. That's the word for a baseball cap. And they also call it, like, they say I think it's the same name they give to the Sukpiak people for the type of hats that they had. And Shingits would call it that. But it's in a Raven story. He made himself a hat like that one time. And it was light gray. And I really liked this hat. It was a nice hat. I was happy I had this hat. And he had said during the day, can I wear your hat? So he had a broken leg. I was trying to make him feel better, let him do whatever he wants. So I let him wear my hat. And I called this story, Adesh Wuddetachye Anasi Teen. The way he stabbed himself with a hot dog. So that's the name of the story. So I was like, okay, let's go get your hot dog. So I went to the little hot dog thing, and then they asked him, what do you want on it? He says, everything. They said, everything? He said, everything. So I put everything on it. The last thing was like a whole bunch of mustard. They put mustard on it. And he went, so I said, y'all know where your mouth is? It's right here. This is where the mouth is. And he went to bite it. And I don't know how it happened, but he went, and he stabbed himself with the hot dog. He missed his mouth altogether, and it stabbed my hat. And then there was mustard all over my hat. And I don't want mustard on anything. So I said, it's your hat now, pal. And that was the story. So, and you guys did great. So I say, you guys did such a good job telling stories that I didn't have to teach no more. You guys got it. I was just kidding. But you guys did a great job. That was really good. Whenever we do stuff like this, here's our goal for Tuesdays. Language sharing Tuesdays. We're going to implement some just general guidelines. When it comes your turn, just go for it. No apologies, no setups, and just go right into if you want to say anything, just say it in Tlingit. We're going to try and stay in Tlingit as much as we can during these times. And it's okay. It's just getting into the act of speaking and sharing. And it'll be fun. We're supposed to have fun with this stuff. We'll think of a prompt and we'll share it on Thursday, we being all of us. So we'll sort of come up with ideas so we can have a weekend project to work on, share it on Tuesday as we keep going through some lessons and stuff. Thoughts, questions, anything before we take our break? Okay, come back at 5 till, and we'll start it back up. Okay, Yuhan. So that would look at this chapter for a little bit. So we're going to jump ahead in the workbook. Most of my edits are done with the second edition. So if you click anywhere that you see it on tlingitlanguage.com, fingers crossed, you should be getting the nearly complete second edition. There's little things here and there as I go through them, catching them. That's pretty darn close. So it's in final review. I'm very excited. But I thought every chapter starts with a little chunk of language that is pulled from somewhere, stories, speeches, stuff that I really like, either the concept or the language itself, just these nice chunks of language. So would anybody like to read this sentence for us? Starting from the top, going all the way to the bottom. You don't have to read the name, that's who said it.
I'll give it a try. Shuganach Adeyat Kaudeyayi ye Shalingit Shaya Dehini Yesh kalneek Ya ich kinach aya Hat ha ustach Ya ich ki Shada.
Sheesh. So we'll do this one line at a time. I'll say it, everybody repeat. Shugunach.
Shugunach.
Adeyat kaudiyah.
Audeyat ka.
Yashingit. Shiyit dehini yesh kashnik.
Shayetahini Ashnik.
Pinachaya. Hot house duck. Ya ihki. Shadag. Anything we recognize in there. Skashnik. And what is that?
I don't know. I was going to ask.
Okay.
Someone was saying it a lot. Maybe you were saying it a lot.
Story.
Story. Yeah. Story. Or stories.
Yeah. Shayetahini is many.
Yeah, Shayet Deheni is many. Shayet Dehin is many. Shayet Deheni is many of those. So that's what the does. many of those. And then it's probably many of those stories is how I would then interpret it.
A day yacht is to this place.
Yacht, yeah, so there's a couple things. Like, so see this odd day right there? Sometimes odd day is towards it. A lot of times it's towards it. I'd probably say most of the time it's towards it. However, if then you get some other stuff and a verb, often with an I or a U at the end, and then yeah, that's actually a whole big verb phrase now. So we'll start with yat kaudiya. That's how it happened here, right? Yat kaudiya. It happened here. Yeah. So the yeah at the end of a verb, if that's the only thing there, like if you had, like let's say there's a verb, aax'w. So aax'w would be they walked along it, or they walked on it. But if you said aax'w diyeh, the place they walked along, like maybe Raven walked down the street, and we named that street aax'w diyeh, the place where they walked. And you can say yesh in there if you wanted. But if you start with a day and then you put yeh on either side of the verb, now you have the way the verb happened. So now we're talking about the way they were walking. Like you might say, if you look out and someone's maybe had a little bit too much fun and they're walking a little tipsy, you might say, oh, kasaye, ade wugudiye. That was strange, the way they were walking. Or you could say something. You could say, yak'e, ade yuchiyetaniye. It was good the way you spoke. Right? So now you're talking about the way that something happened. So that's what you got here, the way the things happened to the Shinget. That's kind of what this is getting at. Anything else? What is ihki?
Down, that's south or
South, yeah, or downstream. So then you got ya ihki nach aya, along the south. Ya ihki, the south. And that, what about shugunach? We got two things left in here.
Halfway.
Well, a shuwu, but there's it's getting similar. So shugunach is the first thing. So it kind of depends how it's being used. But like shugunach, like the first. If it's sort of starting a sentence, it's sort of like saying, first of all. So first of all, the things that happened to the Shinget, many of them stories, through the south it is. Now we get the last part, hot house sadak. We migrated here. So we look over here, and then we get, for the things that happened to the Shinget in the beginning, many say we migrated here through the south. So this is a story by Shah Dak, as he shares it. Let me bring this in just a little bit. So one of the things, again, that this does is it kind of breaks down all the parts. So you can look at sort of all the things. And there's a bit of a code here. So this is what Huayinak was one of my main Tlingit language teachers, and he used to call this the more than you need to know department. But It's there if you want to know it. So this does two things. So if you go up here and you see the tlingit, this is how we would write it. There's a couple of things to keep in mind. When you hear a little break, sometimes you'll use a comma. When you hear a bit of a bigger break, sometimes you use a line break. So it's almost like writing poetry. As far as when you write tlingit, like that's basically the general rules that have been adapted. Is a comma would be a little bit of a break, and you sort of hear like this is a sentence, but sometimes you'll just hear a bit of a pause or something, and you'll get a feel for when it should be the next line down. But then you go through here, and the whole goal is just to pull it all apart and show you the pieces that are in there for some of these things. And this is where the workbook has gone through some pretty significant changes, just in terms of the language community just continuing to talk about how do we do this stuff. Because Tlingit has a bunch of little things that all smush together. So that when you see it, you'll start to see these parts. And you start to see things like nach all over the place in the language. Tlingit chenach, atunach, akanach, deich yagir anach, shugunach, tsiknach. It's all over the place. It's in place names, time references. This nach means to go along or through something. But then sometimes it just pairs up with other things to sort of. So it's not like everything this plus this always equals this. Sometimes they add together to create different types of meaning. When it comes to verbs, this is writing out some of the invisibles. Like you don't hear the object in there, but it's there. The other thing is instead of sort of saying what we call all these little parts, now we're using these angle brackets to say that's how you make a perfective verb. This is how you put something into this. And perfective is a word we're going to be using. It means it's going to have this little thing in there, yuh. It's mostly going to be a W, sometimes going to be an M, sometimes going to be a Y. But that little marker, when you put it into a verb, that means let's talk about this verb in terms of whether or not it has happened. It doesn't have to do with time. It's not a past tense thing. There's a whole bunch of verbs. Ich satin, there's a perfective marker in there. I see you, and I must have already seen you to have seen you. So there's a bunch of things like the Tlingit logic just kind of works like that sometimes. We're going to start to look at some of this stuff slowly. What happens when you put this verb in the perfective? Most of the stories you tell, you can use lots of perfective verbs. Saw it, went there, bought it, threw it, yelled at him, whatever the things are. Then it's going to show you some things like the classifier. And it's going to code the classifier down here to say CL classifier. There's a D component in there. There's an I component in there. And it is a zero group classifier. That stuff will make sense. There's just some things that are just built in there that you will learn how to use. Mostly like the I thing. If you got a perfective marker and the plus I form of the classifier, it has happened. That's what those two things do. Those two things add together to say, yeah, it happened. It happened. Hua, se, ku. Then there's a bunch of other stuff too, and it shows you sometimes how the verb changes shape. One of the things that this workbook does that future things might not do is it writes the verb root kind of as it's appearing right there. So this one was house duck, so you're going to see it as duck. When you go to look that verb root up, you would look it up as da. You would look it up long and low. And there are some people who said you should write them all long and low so that folks will know. But my goal here is to show you that it does change. This one's long and low. This one's short and high. This one's Well, short and low, which is very unusual. This one's long and high. Right? And we start to look at these things. So it's all there for you. And you can look at that stuff and start to sort of try and see some of the pieces. And eventually, you could take a sentence and you can write it out like this yourself, if you want to. Or you can do a word-by-word sort of translation. It's kind of up to you.
Hune,
Ah,
when you say like short and high or short and low, long and high, so is that immediately then in your mind you know how to conjugate it because there's a pattern? Like will it always be the same or it's not that easy?
well, so a verb mode, so just saying perfective, future, command, prohibitive, so these things like happened, will happen, do it, don't do it, that is a combination of things. One is what kind of conjugation particles need to be there. They will always be in between the object and the subject. It'll go object, thematic stuff like this ka, we call it a thematic prefix. It means a surface. Sometimes it's on and sometimes it's a horizontal surface. But the conjugation will go right there. So then there's a couple of things that need to happen. So one is there's what are the sort of things you need to align, like turning these certain knobs. Like you turn this knob this way, that one that way, boom, you got a perfective verb. So by that, if you activate the y, and then you activate the I in the classifier, that means it has happened. That's what you're saying. The next step is a combination of three things. So if we look at, I don't think that verb is in there. Okay. The three things are going to be looking at the conjugation type. So each one of these verbs has a conjugation type, or sometimes we'll call it conjugation class. And this gets a little wild. There are zero verbs, there are na verbs, ga verbs, and qa verbs. We know what kind it is from the command form of the verb. If you tell someone to eat it, you'll say cha. That means it's zero because you go straight to the verb root. If you tell someone to go to sleep, you'll say nata. That's a na verb because you hear it in the command. If you tell someone to stand up, you'll say gitahan, and you hear the ga at the front. If you tell someone to sit down, you'll say qanu, and you hear the qa at the front. So it comes up in the command form in a few other modes, but it dictates what's going to happen in the other modes. For example, a perfective verb that has a closed root, so it means it ends with a consonant, like this underlined K. In the perfective, if that's a zero conjugation, it will be short and high. Dak. Whole bunch of them are like that. Jiwanak. You let it go. You dropped it. All the others, na, ga, and qa, will be long and low. So this verb would be shkaudlenik. It would be long and low, shkaudlenik. I wrote it, kaushechit. So you have to remember some things about a verb. And those things are given to you in the theme. And I know we keep it's sort of like I'm saying we're just gonna take this little swim over here. But then we keep diving to the bottom of the ocean. Like, we gotta go get these urchins down here first. That's what we do with some of this grammar stuff. But there is a step-by-step process. But if folks ask, I will give the explanation and pull the curtain back on some of the grammar.
In your defense, the ocean here doesn't really go step by step. It kind of
Right?
You're on a boat, you're like, oh, 20 feet, 30 feet, 200.
Yeah, right? Hey, look at that. There's a halibut hole right there. Who knew? We got to go down there. Okay. So for this, well, well, maybe we'll do this. So practice these lines. So what we'll do, this is how we'll start class on Thursday. Okay, so we'll just all take turns. Someone will be person A, someone will be person B. Now we have a scripted conversation. Your goal is to read this stuff and make sure you know all these lines. And we'll go through them each. We'll just go through them once here. But y'all gonna take turns being person A, being person B. I would like you to channel a few acting skills. Ken Gasteen used to come and sit in on our classes, David Katzig, and people they would read this stuff and they're, a little tight because we're learning Tlingit. So they would say, kuch, 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 nesh gu, adu sawe, chat aya, ach dach chank, kesh e yach, what? And he would say, you are not a robot. He'd get all excited, right? He's like, you are a human being. He would, he would get really emotional about it. So your goal is going to be to look at these lines, and as we practice them, person A, person B, it's not quite a bad acting contest. We've had those before. But it's put a little emotion in there. The scenario is a grandchild coming to visit a grandparent, bringing them some food. Perfect. So if you're the grandparent, you show your love through a whole bunch of little language things. If you're the grandchild, you show your respect through a bunch of little language things. It was funny because the other day I went to just open up a YouTube video from a link, and it said, click here to prove you're not a robot. And I was like, you're a robot. What are you talking about, Google? But so click the box. No one's going to interrupt you, and it's okay. So that's going to be your goal for the next couple days. Just make sure you got these lines down. And the way this thing is structured, so you see, these are they're numbered by the line. Line 1, line 2, line 3, line 4. But then you see, here's person A, here's person B. Person A has 1 line. Person B now has 2 lines. So keep that in mind so you don't take another person's line, right? We don't want any actors with any extra drama. You stole my line, right? So, and also don't step over the person. Like, don't get excited about your line and then say the thing before they get to their thing. So we'll just say them once. Kau degwash means somebody, they knocked. And then the way that we make a knocking sound in Tlingit is kuch. Everybody say kau degwash. Kuch, kuch, kuch. Neshku. Adu sawe. Khataya. Tachhank. This little K at the end is like you're really endearing yourself to someone when you use that. Keshe yachwatin. Yuk hat yigudi. Wasawe. Klajit. Aya. Hat khwasain. Now don't read through these dialogues and find the tricky lines and try and avoid being that person. This got a couple tricky things in there. Because when you say it kind of fast, you'll say, so you're going back there a few times, right? From my mother's possession, boiled fish. If you're not familiar with the term utchi, it's an important word in Tlingit, utchi. It is not salmon chowder. Got no chives, ain't got no milk, you know. You can make chowder all you want, but you want udchi. It's like water, fish, potatoes, onions, and the grease of your choice. I think that might be about maybe some salt. I'll give you some salt. Okay, and then hat chosein. Ach adi. Udachat sawe. Aax'w ach ish. Yacht utat. Sheesh ho ho. Ijiyis ye atna qasaneye. Hina tina khatyati. Hey khat khosein. Gunil chishik. Gusui tla. Nehlh. Gusui keek. Schoonuh. Kukut de. So echande kukut sekanen. Eoch satini. Tsu hagukwan. Gunil Okay, those are your 26 lines for Thursday. You have to be off book. It's fine. We'll read them. But just make sure you got them kind of down. Any questions about any of those lines?
Did you say that one that was the oosh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if we look at G, that's a contraction of G dach. G dach. So this dach suffix, which means from, can easily turn into just a T underline X if it attaches to a vowel. It's like that vowel will just kick the other vowel right out. Like, get out of here, I'm the vowel. Okay? So the first part, aax'w ji. Ayah. Hat chosein. So my mother, possession from. So even though that's how the pieces are, when you put that together, this is from my mother. So usually in the terms of like what's going on here, hat is to this place, chosein. I carried a full container. Could be a bucket of apples, could be a bucket of water, could be a box of clothes. All of those would be chosein. Utchi is the fish, the boiled fish. And then we have aax'w ji. That's the lead part of the sentence because the grandkid is saying, well, I brought you boiled fish, but it's from my mother. So that's sort of saying, I brought it, but it's from my mom. So I just don't want you to think I cooked all this for you. I gotta give her the credit. Else I get in trouble. Let's try the whole thing. Okay, I'll say it. Y'all repeat. Ajit utchi aya hat chosein. Ajit utchi aya hat chosein. Okay. Okay.
We're going right from like the front to the back.
Yes, the L to the X is probably one of the trickiest transition. There's this word like wealth. They'll say yanash, and it does that as well.
It kind of like rolls your tongue from the top to the back. So
Yeah.
And with the T makes it like doubly hard for some reason.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that as far as like sound transitions, like you have ones where there's a whole bunch of clicks in a row, but that one has like, there were times I like really have to, I was like, oh, I'm gonna say that part and I have to really think about it.
Like in preparation for it.
Right?
Ut.
Okay, so there's our dialogue. We'll go through a few of these terms. So if you want to read about kinship, it's written here, but here's the things that I would say about kinship. For Tlingit kinship, a lot of it is about clans, generations, personal relationships, and inherited relationships. So those are probably the four things. So one is like, what clan is that person? You gotta know that stuff. Two, how close are you to them? You know, and those things are important. The generation, right? Are they one generation up, two generations up, one generation down, two generation down? This stuff is really important. When you start getting into commands, the do's and don'ts of the language, do this, don't do that, do this, don't do that. Those go down the kinship tree. They don't go up the kinship tree. Those are pretty important principles. The other thing, like say your name is Khane, and then there's someone who's 90 years old, and you're 20 years old. I was maybe 20 when this happened. Maybe I was 25. I met this guy who's probably 80 years old, and we started speaking Tlingit, and he said, "Wasai do aax'w?" Khane aax'w. And he said, "Oh, aax'sani, yek'e'ch satini." So his paternal uncle was named Khane. So every time I saw this old man, he'd say, "Aax'sani yek'e'ch satini." My uncle, it's good to see you. So I would say, "Kashk yek'echa." Nephew, that's what I call him. You inherit these terms. There are also times when it gets kind of fluid. Two people, like one could be Dakshawedi, one could be Yanyedi. They refer to themselves as siblings because they're very close. Those types of things can happen. They can also have a big argument and stop using those kinship terms. Just switch it to Khuni, right? Okay. So let's look at some of these. The last thing we do tonight. So the pattern we're going to use is du kinship term away. That is their kinship term. Okay. Du tla away. Du tla away. Du ish away. Du ish away. Du kak away. Du kak away. Du talk away. Du talk away. Du sunny away. Du sunny away. Du art away. Du art away. So some of these terms, so like tla and ish, that's your birth mother, your birth father, or who's raising you, right? Not everybody's got the same situation. Long time ago, the biological sisters of your mother would also be tla. That's how they did a long time ago. It's not the same all the time now. Tlak would be your mother's biological sisters. Probably nowadays, most people use it like that. But it would also be all the aunties in the same moiety as you. Especially same clan. Your clan Shukach Adi, those ladies who are old enough to basically be your mom. Tlak, that's who they are. The males in the same clan, Kak, and not just the siblings of your parents. It goes across the whole, and same with, like, so I'm Shukach Adi, if I became close with someone who's my parents' age, who's Takdein Tan, I would start calling him Achtak, just to show that closeness through the kinship term. Same with Achsani and Achat. So if your father's people are Kagwantan, this is a little bit different. Because that's your father's people and that's who you show the most respect to. If I met any Kagwantan, because they're my father's people, I would refer to them as aax'ani or aax'w, even if they're 5 years old. Don't matter. Don't matter to me, because I respect that relationship. Grandparent. Yushishk owe. Yushishk owe. Yushishk owe. So there is no gender in that term. There is gender in a mother, father, uncle, auntie, right? And so some of these have to do with maternal and paternal. But it's not all the same now. I'm not trying to, there's no shame in having parents who are same moiety. Those things happen. But then the kinship terms, would have to sort of figure those things out a little bit as well. A long time ago, those things didn't happen, or else there was trouble. But these are different times we live in. You can say grandmother and grandfather. So you would say shawat aax'w. Female one, my grandparent. Aax'w. Or dushishk or whatever. Right? So it's just recognizing more of these patterns. Okay. We'll stop there. Any kinship questions? Okay.
Actually,
Oh.
do you have any family trees that we can perhaps fill in or something like that? Because I find that sometimes I get confused with a certain this and that.
Uh-huh.
Oh, you're siding to something?
What's that?
Oh, I was just wondering if you have any family trees that would kind of help differentiate, because my family's so big. Oh.
So at the end of this chapter is these two, and it's not really so much a fill in the blank thing, but it does sort of show, and it's a bit of a snapshot generalization of how those things work. But you could do a family tree sort of based on this. So the thing here is the solid lines, same clan, dashed lines, opposite clan. Typically, right? It's not all the same, we know that. So then we've got Kani and Chuni. So Chuni is Chuni literally means, like if you say Achuni aweh, they are like me, similar to me. Achkani would be my opposite. So if you don't know where to go, like you meet someone and you figure they're a raven, you're a wolf, you'd say Achkani. That's your go-to kinship term. But then you could sort of branch it out from here.
Okay.
Yeah, and the first one is female, and the second one is male. The difference is when you talk about your siblings. So a female would have older sister, younger sister, brother. But that would also include all those people in the clan, right? So everybody your same generation. You got to figure out who's older, who's younger, just for the females. For the males, they have older brother, younger brother, sister. So it don't matter older or younger.
And this could eventually help us if we were to say our family 7 generations back, if it was asked, right? And if
Yeah.
anyone wanted to know, we could follow this to keep our heads straight a little bit.
And you could walk through this stuff too. So you got shishk. So I could say ach shishk owe. Ach tla du tla. My mother, her mother. Then you could say ach tla du ish du tla owe. My mother, her father, his mother. So you can do those types of things as well.
Great grandfather's claim.
Yeah. So shishk claim. Although one time I was just talking about my kinship, and I was talking with Uskla, and I said, and I was just talking, and she said, what'd you say? I said, and And she laughed. She said, "I thought he called me Big Granny." And so she just started laughing. And she's hilarious. She's so fun. Okay, folks, you got your dialogue to work on. Check this out. This is make sure you look through all these sentences in this is chapter 6 in the beginning Tlingit workbook. Grab the new edition. There'll be print ones coming out soon-ish. So good as cheesh. So we'll do this. So on Thursday we'll practice the dialogues. We'll go through this chapter, and then we'll jump over to something a little different. Probably some basic verb stuff, so we can start hammering away some of that stuff. Good as cheesh. Hucha.
Ganaschish.
Are you also going to put the yek who do the yek?
Yes, I will put that up tonight. Nashish for the reminder.
Hune, I just have a question about the other class, the foundations, about getting signed up for the presentation. I just didn't know if I'm missing that because I can't attend the live sessions.
Yeah, let's chat. We'll come up with a solution for you.
Okay, thanks. I appreciate that. Well, you just want to find another time?
Yeah, I'll touch base with you, and maybe you can just do a little bit of extra information on it or something.
Okay. Cheers.
Okay.